We threw a simple block party for our daughter's graduation. The next morning, a letter arrived from the HOA. Violation, excessive celebration without community consent. It came with a $2,000 fine. I asked around. No one else got one. Then I saw a new listing go up. Quiet neighborhood with respectful families. My neighbor had put his house on the market and used our party photos in his listing as the reason he was leaving. We've lived in this neighborhood outside Littleton, Colorado for 12 years. It's not a rich area, but people here care about appearances. Lawns are edged. Driveways are power washed. Kids ride scooters but not after dark. The HOA is small but strict. You forget to bring in your trash cans by the next morning, you get a warning. You leave a Christmas wreath up in March, you get a letter. Still, we've stayed because it's quiet and mostly peaceful. We've never had real drama. Until now. My daughter, Natalie, just graduated high school this May. She's a good kid. Never caused trouble. Doesn't party, doesn't sneak out, nothing like that. Honestly, she's had kind of a hard time the last few years. Some bullying, a tough breakup, a year of remote learning that really messed with her mental health. So when she graduated, on time, with honors, full ride to University of Denver, we decided she deserved something special. We didn't want a huge blowout. We just wanted to celebrate her. We set up 2 folding tables in the driveway, put out some burgers, chips, soda. A few neighbors came by. My brother drove up from Pueblo with his family. My wife made a banner with Natalie's name on it. She cried when she saw it. The whole thing lasted maybe 4 hours. Music was playing, but nothing crazy. No one was drinking. It ended by 10 p.m. People helped us clean up. Natalie hugged every person who came. It was a good night. Then the next morning, I got the letter. Violation. Excessive celebration without community consent. Attached was a fine. $2,000. No warning. No previous notice. Just a formal letter from the HOA. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe the party had broken some noise rule. But we weren't even that loud. I tried to call the HOA, but got their voicemail. I emailed. Nothing. So I drove down to the HOA office and waited. After almost 2 hours, I finally sat down with Margot, the manager. She barely looked up at me. We reviewed the complaint based on photographic evidence, she said. What photos? I asked. She handed me a printed packet. Black and white, grainy, but clear enough. It was our party. Taken from across the street. The angle made it obvious. They were taken from my neighbor Greg's house. Let me tell you about Greg Shepley. Greg's lived across from us for 10 years. Single. Real estate agent. Drives a silver Tesla, always wears those running shoes with no laces. He keeps to himself. Doesn't wave when he drives by. Doesn't talk when he's mowing his lawn. One of those guys who nods instead of saying hi. He's always seemed uptight, but not rude. That's how I saw him. Until this. I looked again at the photos. They weren't just 1 or 2. There were at least 6 shots, all from slightly different angles, like someone was trying to document something. I left the office with the fine still on my record, and a sick feeling in my gut. When I got home, I pulled up Zillow. Greg's house had a new listing. It had gone live that same weekend. The photos showed his remodeled kitchen, new hardwood floors, and a backyard deck he built last year. Then I reached the last picture. It was a wide shot. Our driveway. Our party. You could see Natalie, smiling, holding a plate of food. The caption below it read, "Current seller seeking peaceful neighborhood after disruptive events. See final image for example of recurring issue." He was using our daughter's graduation party as proof that the neighborhood was too loud. That we were the problem. And he turned us into a marketing tool to get sympathy from buyers. I sat there, staring at the screen. And something in me shifted. He wanted to sell his house at a high price. He wanted to make us look bad in the process. Fine. Then I would make sure selling his house became the hardest thing he ever did. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking about that photo. Natalie's smile, frozen there in some stranger's phone as proof that our home was a problem. She saw it the next morning. She came down with her backpack, ready to head out for work, and I showed her the listing. She stared for a second. Then her face changed. "He used my party?" she asked. "Why?" "To make it look like we're ruining the neighborhood," I said. She didn't say anything else. She just left for work quietly. That made me angrier than anything. She didn't deserve this. She worked hard, stayed out of trouble. And now she was being used like that. Greg wasn't just being a jerk. He was being strategic. using our party in the listing, filing a complaint through the HOA right before his open house, trying to make it seem like he was the victim. All to sell his house for a little more money. I wasn't going to let him win. Greg's a real estate agent, which means he has a license. That also means he has to follow a lot of rules. I called my friend Benny, who works in insurance and dabbles in property law. I asked him to look at Greg's listing and tell me what stood out. He called me back the next day. You know that deck he built? He said. The one with the string lights and the custom railing? Yeah? No permit. No inspection records. And your county requires both. That was strike one. Benny sent me the city's link to report unpermitted structures. Totally anonymous. I submitted the report with a polite message. Neighbor believes this deck was added in 2024 without inspection. Please verify. Next, I started looking at past HOA records. Our HOA posts its minutes online, but you have to scroll through PDFs. I sat there night after night, reading them. Over the last 5 years, one name kept coming up in the resident complaint section, Greg Shepley. He'd complained about loud Halloween display, kids playing music, lawn maintenance violation, a neighbor left clippings overnight, improper holiday lighting, someone left up icicle lights until mid-January, unregistered vehicle in driveway. Turned out to be a cousin visiting for Thanksgiving. This guy had basically been at war with everyone. He wasn't just targeting us. He had a history of being a problem neighbor, and now he wanted to run away from the mess he made, and blame us as he left. That gave me my next move. I printed out the photos from the listing. The HOA violation. The city's building code on decks. A copy of every complaint Greg had filed in the past 5 years. I added a typed note. Are we really the problem? Or is the person across the street just tired of getting caught? Then I drove around our block. 10 houses. I put a packet in each mailbox. No return address. Just a message from someone who'd had enough. The fallout started that weekend. Greg held his first open house on a Sunday afternoon. By then, my signs were already up. I made 3 big yellow signs, hand-painted, nothing fancy. One read, Seller claims noisy neighbors, reality, teens grad party equals $2,000 fine. Another said, Buyers beware, illegal deck fake claims, HOA drama included. I placed one in my yard. One on the sidewalk. One on the corner near the entrance of our street. I stayed outside, sipping coffee, waving politely to people as they drove by. Some stopped to read the signs. Some took photos. Greg came out halfway through and stared at me like I'd just keyed his car. He didn't say a word. But his jaw was tight. The next day, the listing photos changed. That last photo, with Natalie, was gone. But it was too late. I had saved the screenshots. And printed copies. It was the following Thursday when a white city vehicle pulled up in front of Greg's house. I watched the inspector knock on his door, clipboard in hand. Greg answered. They talked for about 5 minutes. Then the inspector walked around the side of the house, measuring tape in hand, and started taking pictures of the deck. He was there for 45 minutes. Greg stood in his driveway, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. But I saw his face. He was nervous. The next day, the listing was marked as temporarily off market. And I was just getting started. 2 days after the inspector visit, the for sale sign disappeared from Greg's yard. Not just covered, gone. Like it had never been there. The listing stayed offline too. I kept checking Redfin, Zillow, everything. Nothing. It was clear Greg had pulled the house off the market. I waited for some kind of reaction. A note. A knock at the door. Something. But Greg said nothing. No wave, no glare, not even eye contact. He just came and went in his Tesla like everything was normal. So I turned up the heat. They hold public meetings once a month in the community center. I've never been to one before. This time, I showed up early, with a folder full of documents. The meeting started like always, budget updates, landscaping complaints, some guy asking about adding solar panels. Then it was time for community concerns. I stood up and introduced myself. I said I wanted to speak about unfair enforcement and selective treatment by the HOA. I handed out copies of Greg's real estate listing. I highlighted the part where he blamed our excessive noise. Then I passed around screenshots of the party photos, our party, taken without consent and used in his listing. I explained how we got fined $2,000 for one peaceful graduation gathering. And then I showed them a spreadsheet of all the complaints Greg had filed against neighbors over the years. One by one. Halloween music. Lawn clippings. A kid's lemonade stand. I looked straight at Margot. How many of those were ever verified? She looked uncomfortable. Flipped through her notes. I don't have that information in front of me, she said. Another neighbor, Mrs. Kavanaugh, lives 2 doors down, spoke up. He got my grandson's car towed for parking overnight, she said. He was home on leave from the army. The room got quiet. That's when I played my last card. I showed the city's email confirming Greg's deck was under investigation for code violations. I kept my voice steady. You fined a family $2,000 over a party that hurt no one. Meanwhile, this man's been building without permits, filing dozens of petty complaints, and using HOA enforcement to help him flip his house. Then I sat down. The board didn't say much that night, but I could see it in their faces. The room had shifted. The next afternoon, I was hauling garbage cans back from the curb when Greg finally made a move. He walked across the street, first time in 10 years he'd ever come onto my property. You done? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at him. You've made your little point, he said. You happy? You think you won? You used pictures of my daughter in a real estate ad, I said. And then filed a complaint to cover your ass. He clenched his jaw. You don't know what this cost me. No, I said. But I'm guessing it's close to $2,000. He laughed, short, bitter. Congratulations, he said. You just tanked my sale in the worst market in 10 years. Then he walked off. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. From the HOA. I opened it slowly, half expecting another fine. But it was a notice of fine removal. Full cancellation. The $2,000 was erased. Attached was a note that read, upon further review, your event did not constitute a violation. We regret the earlier decision. No apology. No explanation. But they knew. The heat had worked. Then came the rumor. Mrs. Kavanaugh called me 2 days later. You didn't hear this from me, she said. But Greg's being investigated by the real estate board. Apparently someone, she didn't say who, had submitted an ethics complaint about misuse of images, false claims in marketing, and failure to disclose permit issues. Benny confirmed it a few days later. He might lose his license, he said. Or at least get suspended. And just like that, Greg's whole plan had blown up in his face. But I wasn't quite finished. After the HOA dropped the fine and Greg's listing vanished, I thought things would calm down. But then the passive-aggressive stuff started. First, someone threw raw eggs at our driveway one night. Just 3. 1 hit the garage door, 2 on the sidewalk. Then someone knocked over our trash cans twice in 1 week. We have a camera, but not a good one. You could barely make out the shape, but the height and build? It matched Greg. I didn't bother calling the cops. What would I say? My neighbor might have egged my driveway because I exposed his lies. Instead, I got a new camera. Wide lens. Night vision. 4K. I mounted it right under the eaves facing his house. And I waited. It took 5 nights. Then, just before 1 a.m. on a Wednesday, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I watched as Greg crept across the street in a hoodie, holding something shiny. He bent over, aimed toward my truck, and the screen flashed. When I checked the footage, I saw everything. He had a razor blade and was keying my truck. Deep, slow scratches all across the passenger door. I backed up the footage. Downloaded it twice. And the next morning, I filed a police report. They showed up that afternoon. 2 officers. 1 male, 1 female. I gave them the footage. They watched it twice. You know who that is? The male officer asked. Yeah, I said. Greg Shepley. Lives across the street. Real estate agent. The officers went across the street and knocked. I watched from the living room window. Greg opened the door, said a few things, and tried to shut it, but they stopped the door with their foot. 10 minutes later, he was outside, handcuffed, sitting on the curb. He didn't look at me. They didn't arrest him, just gave him a citation and told him he'd have to go to court. He looked humiliated. The kind of humiliation that doesn't go away fast. Word got out fast. Our neighborhood has a Facebook group. Someone posted a blurry picture of Greg in cuffs. The caption said, "Not so quiet now, huh?" Within a week, Greg put his house back on the market, as is this time. No pictures. No tours. Just a rush listing with a slashed price, $50,000 below what he'd been asking before. A month later, the sold sign went up. He moved out the next day. Didn't say goodbye. His replacement? A couple with 3 kids and 2 giant Labradors. They held a birthday party the first weekend they moved in. Bounce house, loud music, people laughing until midnight. I stood in my driveway with a cold beer, watching the chaos, and smiled. Natalie came home for fall break a few weeks later. I told her everything. Showed her the police report, the listing updates, even the court date. She laughed. "Dad," she said, "you went full Liam Neeson." "I just wanted him to feel what it's like to be treated unfairly," I said. She nodded. And now he does." "Yeah, maybe I went too far. Maybe I could have just appealed the fine and let it go. But the truth is, something about this hit deeper. He tried to humiliate my family to get ahead. Used a moment of joy, our daughter's graduation, and turned it into a weapon. Filed a bogus complaint, cost us thousands, and made us look like trash in front of the whole community. I wasn't going to let him walk away clean. Now he's gone. His perfect plan backfired. His reputation? Damaged. His profit? Cut in half. His real estate license? Under review. Me? I've still got my house. My kid's off chasing her future. And my neighbors? They wave now. They talk. We know who the real problem was. And if anyone else thinks they can use the HOA as a weapon, well, they've seen what happens.